Hello, I hope you're doing well. My name is Jacqueline Vino from Galasso Learning Solutions, and welcome to the Genuine Learning blog. Today we are going to discuss a very exciting topic because the AICPA's Digital Assets Working Group has actually made some updates to the Digital Assets Practice Aid. So the previous version of this practice aid actually had a really lot of great information on client acceptance and continuance considerations, risk assessment, laws and regulations, related parties, and also consideration of an entity's use of a service organization. So basically, all of these topics are now in part one of this guide. So it was a really great starting point for this practice aid, but the most recent updates have actually added a whole new part two. So what we are going to discuss today are just some of the changes that came from this practice aid, as well as what is in this new part two of the guide. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So just some background information here. Digital assets have been a very hot topic for the standard setters over the past couple of years. There definitely has been a lot of demand that was coming from stakeholders. They really wanted just both the AICPA and the FASB to be focused in this area, since it's definitely grown in popularity over the past number of years, and it's also very much an evolving area. There's always new information that's coming out about these types of assets. So the practice aid also does get updated fairly periodically. So they actually updated Chapter 4 of this guide back in July of 2023. And I think that really shows that the AICPA is being responsive to stakeholder feedback and also trying to just make sure they get lots of really good information into this practice aid for us. So the objective of this practice aid is to provide a non-authoritative guidance on how to account for and audit these digital assets. So as I previously mentioned, this information is coming from the Digital Assets Working Group. So that means that it has not been approved by any senior committee of the AICPA. So just wanted to point out that this is in fact non-authoritative guidance, but still has a lot of really great information and considerations for us. So here are the actual updates that were made in this practice aid. So basically they updated the practice aid by adding just these new chapters and a new appendix on these items here. So we have new topics on how to audit the valuation of digital assets and auditing procedures regarding digital assets existence, rights, and obligations assertions as well. So another really interesting noteworthy change too that's within this practice aid is that it actually switched from a more narrative structure to a more user-friendly Q&A format. So they really wanted to provide more focused, guidance on these key topics here. So it's also been updated to align with SAS 143, which is auditing accounting estimates, and SAS 145, which is the very famous, very popular risk assessment. So we all know and love those standards. So in addition to that, right, this was really just a continuation and an improvement from the previous practice aid, right? As I previously mentioned, there was already a lot of really great information in part one, really geared towards the acceptance and continuance, planning and risk assessment areas of an engagement. So they really wanted to just expand, focus more on a variety of topics. So talking about valuation, existence, rights and obligations, all very important areas that we're going to focus on. So here is Chapter 5. So Chapter 5 really focuses on considerations for existence, rights, and obligations of these digital assets. And again, this is in the very user-friendly Q&A format. So as you can see here, there are really a number of individual topics that you can find within Chapter 5. So for example, there is an entire section on evaluating the reliability of information that's obtained from a public blockchain. And what that has is just all of the factors that might be relevant for an auditor to consider. So it also goes ahead and outlines audit procedures and considerations for digital assets that are held in self-custody or are held potentially by a third party. And they also have different considerations for sending confirmations. So as you can see here, lots of these individual topics really trying to get at the existence, rights, and obligation assertions. And Chapter 6, on the other hand, is really honed in and focused on the valuation of digital assets, which is another super, super important, super relevant area. So this specific sections that are in this chapter are really addressing the measurement of crypto assets that are used using prices, in active trading markets or that are potentially thinly traded. So for example, in a non-active market here, impairment considerations, very important to include as well. And also any audit considerations for an entity that recognizes realized gains and losses on the sale of their crypto assets as well. And finally, in addition to adding chapters 5 and chapter 6 in the practice aid, Appendix B is another very interesting addition. So just to give you a little bit of background on what this is, on March 31st of 2022, the Securities and Exchange Commission staff actually released staff bulletin number 121, which basically expressed the staff's views on entities that are basically trying to safeguard crypto assets for another party and kind of how to account for that type of an obligation. So the SEC staff really believes that these safeguarding arrangements involve a little bit more unique risk compared to safeguarding other types of non-crypto assets. So they really wanted to address that in the staff bulletin just to kind of enhance information on this. So what they came up with was an entity that has a safeguarding obligation should recognize a safeguarding liability with an accompanying safeguarding asset. So both going to be initially measured at the fair value of that safeguarded crypto asset. So the Digital Assets Working Group decided to include this in the practice aid as well, in addition to chapters 5 and chapter 6, because it just has lots of good information. And once again, it is in that Q&A format. So as you can see, there really are some wonderful updates that are in the new Digital Asset Practice Aid, but that is all that we have today for this Genuine Learning blog. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you in another blog. Have a great day.